For those of you who don't know, HGA was started back in the 60s, the Historic Guide Association. Its primary mission is to further education. We're a social group, 501c7. I can't thank you enough for being here. For the new guides up here, this is going to make you a better guide. It is really my pleasure to introduce Gregory Anderson, part of the class of 2020. Our Gregory has a penchant for maritime history. I was going to passion for maritime history.
I'm a millennial, I don't have a pension.
In a previous life, he was a pirate. But anyway, his talk tonight is on the woes and blows of the whaling community in San Simeon. So again, let's give Gregory Anderson a big hand.
All right, again, folks, thank you all so much for joining me this evening. I am incredibly excited to do this talk with you all. And I hope I'm going to be able to cover everything that I like. Now, my goal this evening for you is for you all to walk away with a little bit of a better understanding of our local maritime history that takes place just right in San Simeon and even along the coast here just off of Cambria. Now, I'm not going in a super deep delve into whaling and the entire history of that. That would be so much more of an entire lecture for a college course. So I've tried to put this down to roughly maybe 30, 45 minute kind of a presentation here, give or take. It really just depends as we go along. I want to give plenty of time for questions afterwards. So please keep those in mind, folks. I do have a couple of my resources around to really help us get going if I do get stumped later on there. But let's go ahead and get going. Alrighty, now here this is an illustration from about the 1870s from Richard Scammon's Marine Mammals. In that one a little bit more detail. But I'd like y'all to take a look at this. We have two whale boats going after the whale here. Now these are generally about a 30-foot long boat and about 6 foot wide. They're pointed at both ends, called a double ender. The idea behind that is if you have a larger following sea, it's maybe going to help break around you, help you kind of surf down the waves rather than getting pummeled from behind. Now, I'd like to point out too, so you see these fellas, they are sailing. We got the rig all set up here. They're also rowing along as they go, keeping up with the whale. Now we have the mate there at the forward part of the bow of the boat, and he has a greener harpoon gun. Now, this would have been used by our very own Captain Joseph Clark starting about 1871. The man in the back, this is the boat steer. He is the fellow that will actually throw the harpoon when they're getting into that. But we'll get a little bit more into that here soon, everybody. And this will be the woes and blows of the San Simeon Shore Whalers. Again, as my friend Paul said, my name is Gregory Anderson. I am a Guide 1 at Hearst San Simeon State Historical Monument. The long-winded way of us saying Hearst Castle. Now, shore whaling, folks, this was the original whaling. Shore whaling is essentially the act of taking a whale via a whaleboat from the shore. Originally, you'd see them just off the coast, maybe 5 to 6 miles. A whaleboat would then be launched going in pursuit. Well, by about the mid-17th century, whaling took to the open seas. By that time, they had developed the tripods, these iron cauldrons. Well, we'll get into a bit more as well. But then by about 1854, folks, that is when shore whaling began here in the state of California. The first shore whaling operation was in Monterey. That was the Monterey Whaling Company, established by Captain John Pope Davenport, again in 1854. He'd actually started whaling, was on a whale ship initially. They began taking whales fairly easily just right out of Monterey Bay. And in 1852, Captain Davenport attempted to set up a whaling station, just keeping his ship anchored out there in the bay. It was not too successful, but that's when he decided to move the try-works right onto the shore, using those big giant cauldrons to render the fat, boil the blubber down to oil. At that point, that's when he first started this. However, there is a couple discrepancies kind of going around. Charles Scammons, that is the fellow we saw that illustration of the whaleboats in that very first slide, folks. It was in the Marine Mammals of the northwestern coast of North America in 1874. He stated that Davenport had actually began shore whaling 3 years prior, but still up in Monterey. That does get a little bit more hairy because G.B. Good's Fishery and Industries states that it was all started by our own Captain Clark. 1851. However, this report, it goes on to contradict itself just a little bit later on, and says, as you can see here, that Captain Clark, Machado, began shore whaling at Monterey, where an American, Captain Davenport, the first California shore whale fisher, was engaged before him. And the Monterey Herald Weekly, this is what we really use, I believe, to my understanding, as a source. It was in 1874 that they're really going forward again, saying, kind of confirming that this was all began by Captain Davenport in 1854. He had a crew of about 12 men with him. A lot of these were Portuguese whalers. One of them was Captain Joseph Clark, originally Jose Machado. Captain Clark here, take a look in the background of this picture, folks. This is from a whaling voyage around the world. It is a very long painting. I believe it's now held at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. Now, this painting here, we see Pico Island. Now, this is likely where Joseph Clark was born, around 1835. Now, this was sort of an impoverished island community for him at that time growing up there. And at 12 years old, Captain Clark, well, he jumped aboard a Danish ship as a cabin boy. I believe this is where he really first started getting his taste into whaling. I don't know if that very first vessel he was on, if that was a whale ship or just some other sort of a merchant ship. But later on, Joseph Clark, he did get involved in that. He reached the coast of California here by 1852. Now keep this in mind, this man was about 17 years old, really just a boy, still a kid at that point. 2 years later, at 19, he arrives in Monterey, and he begins shore whaling there with Captain Davenport. Oh, about by the age of 28. Well, in 1863, well, I'll take that back up. He's also, though, involved in whaling down in San Diego. And actually, in San Diego, he is recorded as taking a right whale from a whaling ship. Then he goes up around Los Angeles County. In Los Angeles County, he's involved in the shore whaling operation out there along the Portuguese Bend. It was about 1863 that Joseph Clark arrived here in San Luis Obispo County in San Simeon. That is according to our local historian, Geneva Hamilton, who wrote Where the Highway Ends. It's an excellent source for anything really in this area, at least in my personal opinion, folks. By 1864, Joseph Clark has started his shore whaling operation, and he's officially on the tax records here in San Luis Obispo County by 1865. So essentially, folks, to put this in a little bit of a Hearst perspective for us all, when Joseph Clark arrives out here, that is the same year that William Randolph Hearst is born. 1865, when he's officially on the tax records. Well, that's also when George Hearst, W.R. Hearst's father, begins purchasing about 40,000 acres of ranchos in the surrounding area. Let's hear, folks, a chart of San Simeon Harbor. This is from 1852. This is from the very first U.S. geodetic survey for this coast. And if you take a look as well, 1852, there is no wharves here, there's no piers, there's no stores. It is most likely that Sebastian's store really was not built in 1852. More likely it's going to be 1872, around that time period. A lot of this information comes from Pete Sebastian recalling from his youth. But here we can see that there is no store, nothing has been set up. Originally, at some point, folks believed that perhaps it was Captain John Wilson, the Scottish sea captain of the Ichuco, which started the store of Sebastian's. We're getting a slightly off topic from down there, folks. Here for our San Simeon whaling station, Joseph Clark, when he's employing these men, he has between 10 and 20 whalers working during the seasons. A lot of these sailors, they came from the Azores, the islands on the coast of Portugal, as well as the mainland country as well. He began with 3 whaleboats. 2 of them would have been 30 feet long with that 6-foot beam. The other ones were a little bit smaller, though he did end up with a fleet of about 9 vessels, including a towboat, and this, folks, is likely going to be a small steam launch. They would have, they would likely have outfitted one of the old whaleboats, installing a boiler and even a steam engine into it there. Now, they wouldn't necessarily be hunting the whales with this vessel, a little bit too loud going after them, but hauling back a carcass of an animal that weighs between 90,000 and 140,000 pounds, that might be a little bit nicer on the backs for the whalers there to have that steam launch going through. They also had a small 6-foot fishing skiff. This was locally known as the Butter Box. And Captain Clark, he was known to loan the boat out there to locals in the area to kind of go out fishing right there in San Simeon Cove. Whalers Wharf, folks, this was originally built kind of more inland to the cove, about right in this area, about 1864. They had a ramp with a capstan set up there, and a capstan is going to be essentially like a giant winch. And that way they could have the blubber pulled up the ramp to the tripods, those giant 200-gallon vats, the cauldrons there, where they would render the blubber down to oil. Well, shore whalers, they aren't always going after the whales. They have some time on their hands waiting for a whale to be sighted. Now, just like I need a little bit of water there, our shore whalers did as well. There was no spring or necessarily any forest on the point there. A lot of the eucalyptus trees we see were planted likely by George Hurst, I believe after 1890. I'm not quite certain on that. Our whalers, they'd be employed by taking these giant water casks with revolving handles. Had to haul them about 1.5 miles away to the nearest spring. Like they gather up oak wood for the fires for the tripods as well. They would also pass their time by making some elaborate picture frames. What they did for these is they were using the crates that had been delivering the goods to the Piedras Blancas light station. Plenty of extra materials around. They were known to make those elaborate picture frames. Also toys for the local school children. I believe tops, little things of that matter around. They did have a lookout set up. In fact, folks, San Simeon was not the only place where they had the lookout set. They did have an area up near Piedras Blancas. Now, this really wasn't necessarily a whale station, just more of a lookout. They were known to keep a couple of boats out there. Some folks believe that they may have used a 30-foot lookout. You could have a fellow up there with a spyglass, just keeping an eye out for the spout and cry, "There she blows." And their signal for letting it know that a whale had been sighted and the boat should be launched to go after that was the lowering of a flag, so they could keep an eye out to sea. If a flag had been dropped, they'd know that they ought to head out to sea. Excuse me, folks. Right here, this illustration is courtesy of the Mystic Seaport Museum. It's an illustration of a whaleboat and gear. Again, folks, we can really see a little bit more into detail of this. Again, we have the double-ended boat. Now, generally, if you look right in the center, there's a slit going down. Oh, not quite from that. They usually would have an area down the middle there, and this would be for a center board to be placed in. This is going to help the sailors actually sail a little bit more into the wind. Makes it a bit easier going about there. Oh, and I mentioned, too, having that pointed in at the stern so the water could break around you. That's not always going to be the case, though, especially when you're going after a whale. That's why one of my favorite objects here in this favorite piece of equipment is the bailing piggin. This is just basically a fun little bucket you use to bail your boat out. I live on my sailboat in Morro Bay with my blue and gold macaw, and so quite often I am having to bail my skiff out after the storms. My friends out here living on boats know all about that as well. You'll see a bit more of the equipment, though, too, folks. The drogue, this is going to be set. They'll tire the whale out. It is attached to it via harpoon, something of that manner as well, to kind of slow it down. This is a rather gruesome topic, unfortunately, folks. You can see as well the oar locks, the mast, where it will be. They'll have everything all set to go. Now, to keep a compass with them, our fob will roll in. It's got to be able to know which way they're sailing back. Well, these sailors, they're known to also pass the time on the boats by smoking quite a bit of tobacco, so they usually keep a big old plug of tobacco around for themselves as well. Here are some more of the actual whaling implements. It's all right, don't worry about it, Kim. Now, if you look up top, it's good. Now, if you look up top here, folks, we can see more of the harpoons going around. And on the far right, these are the harpoons, kind of like I have here. Now, this is going to be just the actual hand harpoon that we have going around. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, of course, so by 1871, that's when they're starting to use the greener harpoon gun. And that is, as Geneva Hamilton described it, this big bazooka-looking fellow right up there. Oh, well, they'll be shooting that in using a toggle harpoon. That is the farthest one just right over there. After this is attached to the whale, well, by 1871, they're also using the bomb lances, and that's what this gun right here is for, folks. Now, the one that quite looks like a small bomb, that is the bomb lance there. And here we have, this photograph is from, I believe, Monterey, and that is the greener harpoon gun, and it is attached to a swivel there. And our harpoons that were made for this specific gun were made by George Proctor right here in Cambria, folks. And this is courtesy of our friends at the Cambria Historical Society. That's my understanding. I believe it'll be right around here. It'll be George Proctor's blacksmith shop. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the furnace is right around this area as well. Again, just made right locally, kind of down the street from us here, folks. Now, this is going to be some actual whaling footage, everyone. This is courtesy of the Mystic Seaport Museum, kind enough to allow me to use this. This footage can be a little bit gruesome. It doesn't actually show the whale being harpooned or the harpoon going into the whale. I will warn you ahead of time before it gets close. We do see the harpoon going into the water near the whale. I'll give you a little bit of a notice for those who are uncomfortable with this. This is actually footage, though, from a whaleboat, but it's going to be very similar, the entire aspect of it. Although they're launching their whaleboats from this whale ship versus on shore, which is what we would be having down in San Simeon. So you can see here, the men are getting themselves ready, and this is going to be typical clothing. You got the duck trousers and the checkered shirts, likely a flannel, something warm as they're going out to sea.
Gregory, do you know when this was filmed?
Unfortunately, I do not know the time period or this location. I did reach out to the museum, wasn't able to get an answer in time. If I do, I will let you folks know right about that. Here, they're loosening the sails on the painter line. Now they are stepping the mast here, folks. Imagine trying to do this as your boat is rolling around. It's going to be about 25, 30 feet long, 6 feet wide. And here they are raising the sails. And we got the whales in the distance. There she blows. Alrighty, folks. And you see the ship there is hove to. They've actually stopped themselves in place. And we have the men paddling, and the man with the steering oar is doing a bit of sculling. They would paddle. It's a quieter way to approach the whale, not as quickly. Here they are dropping the sail, and they're going to take that mast down. They're going to be going after a whale just solely under oar power, folks. Bend your backs and break your oars. That's what the old whalers would say. And here you can see very quickly how they're going. And we have the pot of whales. Here in San Simeon, they were generally going after California gray whales. The man in the back at the steering oar, that is the mate. He's also known as the striker. The man at the forward post, that is the boat steerer. He is the one that launches the harpoon. After he launches the harpoon, he and the boat steerer, they will change courses. Now, we are getting up a little bit closer to that part, folks. I'm going to let you know. Keep an eye out now. This boat steerer is encouraging all the folks to get closer. And look how fast they're getting so close. Now, I would turn away and close your eyes if you do not like the nature of this, folks here. And there we are. Now, folks, and after the harpoon is attached to the whale, again, that boat steerer, he will go back and take a hold of the 20-foot steering oar. Meanwhile, the mate, or in Joseph Clark's time, his preferred term, I believe, would be the striker. They would use a lance to actually kill the whale. That is when they're not using those bomb lances and the greener harpoon guns. But a lance similar to this, you're just not going to have a barb on it. They're really going for that, just right behind the fin to pierce the heart of the whale. After which, then this whale is towed back to shore. It could be 5, 6 miles. It could be up to 20 miles at a time. And this, folks, here we have flincing a whale at San Simeon. This illustration is actually of San Simeon Cove. It's also referred to as a cutting into a whale in San Simeon. Now, this is going to be an actual quote. This is from the San Luis Obispo Tribune, May 8th of 1880, describing it. The captain has a little wharf of his own, where the whale is towed up alongside when taken and a strip of blubber started up an inclined plane. that runs from a capstan or windlass down to the water's edge. Large hooks are inserted in the blubber near the body of the whale, from which lines lead to the windlass. The turning now commences, and as the huge carcass rolls over and over, the blubber is cut into a strip about 3 feet wide and slid up the incline. Under this operation, the whale soon finds himself peeled of his oiled coat, as slick as an orange. The blubber, after it has been taken off, is cut into small bits, thrown into 200-gallon kettles, where it is tried out, from which it is drawn into cooling tanks and ready for the barrels. Here we can see these are some of the implements that you'd be using cutting into the whales. Different varieties of spades and blubber hooks and pikes. And this next set of equipment, this is what you're going to be using when you're actually trying the whales. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get down to San Simeon to get a picture of one of the tripods. They originally had 3 of these 200-gallon vats, folks. One of them is down there at the cove near the Coastal Discovery Center. You can see it out there today. 100 years ago in 1924, they were a bit divvied up. I believe one was taken into the backcountry. It was used by the Hearst ranchers to deal with hoof and mouth disease, treating the hoofs of the cattle. The third one, according to Geneva Hamilton, it's just off the bluffs from where the old whalers' wharf was, buried under a bunch of sand and sediment. These instruments that we see up top here, folks. So the very top one, the number 1, this is going to be our blubber fork. We got the stirrer right down below it. This will be a skimmer, the number 3, getting anything out of it that you don't quite need. And something to veil the oil out a little bit, and a fire poker here as well. Now, while they are rendering the fat down, folks, oftentimes you would have the wives of the shore whalers, or just locals from San Simeon. They're coming out. Now, this is known to have a putrid smell during the rendering, but that didn't stop these folks from making Portuguese donuts. I believe malasadas. I'm not quite certain of that. But it's said that they cooked very quickly and did not pick up any of the whale taste to it. They would also cook smelt in there that could be fishing out of the bay. Though I'd wonder how much you'd want to eat it, not so much for being cooked in whale oil, but the whalers to know that the oil is at the perfect temperature. They'd spit a plug of tobacco inside there, see it sizzle, and that's how they know that oil is hot enough to go. Folks, and here we have San Simeon Bay. This is another chart survey. And this is from about 1871, the original that is. And here's where you can see this is Whaler's Wharf, the original part. So there might be a tripod just right off under the water somewhere there. We have the Steamer's Wharf as well, and then the Hearst Wharf. In fact, that is what we're all talking about here, folks. Now, this in red, this is really shown because about 1883, they went through and added a couple more things to it there. What that says right there is the approximate site of an astronomical station of 1852. Again, it was about 1864 that Joseph Clark, he built the Whaler's Wharf right up there. He and George Hearst, though, they came together, and in 1869, they built the Steamer's Wharf. Now, another name for this wharf is going to be the Freighter's Wharf, and this may be a little bit more of an accurate name. Because honestly, it was a lot of coastal schooners that were making calls down to San Simeon in this time period. It was a little bit difficult, though, for some of the sailing vessels to get up to this wharf if there was any sort of southerly wind or southerly swell coming on up. It's likely, though, that William Randolph Hearst, as a young boy, would have met Joseph Clark. He may have been hoisted up on a bosun's chair up to the bluffs right above there when he's visiting the area with his father. But since it's difficult, though, for those vessels to offload their goods during certain times of that wharf, what they would do is they would just anchor right out here in the bay, quite literally floating the goods to shore, using that incoming tide going around. George Hearst, wanted to be able to make a little bit of money off of that. Eventually, it gets, I believe, the Tidelands Land Grant Act allows him to charge for anything that's landed upon the shores. But he received a grant himself about 1878, and that is when he built that long Hearst Wharf. Now, excuse me, folks, that wharf, it was more inland, as you can see. makes it a little bit easier because it extends out into a medium depth of a low tide, about 20 feet. So at that time, this is one of the few deep water natural ports here on the coast of California. This is a photograph of, I believe, that wharf, folks. So this is going to be a little bit more modern for us. Some of my friends might be able to recognize the Julia Morgan building, the warehouse right out there. This wharf, though, folks, it's built at a little bit of an incline, and they had it that way so you could have the rail system so the cars could be loaded on up and just easily slid right on down the whale track to the warehouse. That, I believe, was built around 1871 to about 1878 or so. And this is what the wharf looks like today, folks, or at least that original wharf from 1878. If you get a chance to go out to the cove on a very extremely low tide, you can see some of these old pilings here. My friend Anthony and I and Paul, we went and checked this out. This is from, I believe, December of 2021. Went out there on a king tide with another friend of ours and got to view this. And you can see that rock right up there, that is the north entrance rock at the point as well. Folks, the shore whalers, they were involved in some hairy situations, helping people out. One of these situations involved the shipwreck of this vessel here, the Harlech Castle. Harlech Castle, folks, was an ironbark sailing ship. It was heading down to Peru. At the end of August of 1869, the Harlech Castle, it struck a rock. It was very foggy out, and this rock was unknown, not really on any charts at the time, and the ship went down. Unfortunately, at least two of the sailors drowned. Joseph Clark and his whalers, they with great difficulty were able to launch just one of the whale boats. It was a heavy seas and surf, and they were credited with rescuing 7 of the sailors that were aboard that vessel. These sailors, they were picked up by the steamer, the Sierra Nevada, as she took them up north to San Francisco. The survivors allow the captain, the crew, those that survived, to make their official reports. But when the Sierra Nevada, and this is the vessel right here, folks, when she's coming back down the coast, though, October of the same year, she struck a reef, an unknown rock, off of just what's now known as Point Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada Point, it's north of San Simeon, ran aground with this rock. Then when the swell picked it up again, bashed it down, and caused the boilers to burst out from the brackets. Now, I do believe, though, that the folks were able to be rescued, survived off of this. Again, this was October, she went down, and this did lead to the creation of the Piedras Blancas light station. Yes?
I was looking at the last ship, but sorry, it looked a little more like a frigate than a bark. What's the difference between the two, do you know?
Yes, well, it really is all about the rigging, and that one is kind of blocked. It does seem like the sail is off, but every document that we have, they call it an iron bark. And off the top of my head, I can't tell you quite the rigging diagrams. I know it does seem a little bit off, but I've just been going from the newspapers. Yes?
Sorry, I was just saying, as a free master, it's usually called a frigate. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I appreciate the distinction.
Yeah, no worries, yes. And this one, actually, it may have had 4 masts on there. I can't remember if it's kind of blocked in the background there. Anyway, here, folks. Now, this is going to be from a whaling ship, a journal somebody was keeping about 1852. And this is a Nantucket sleigh ride, folks. Nantucket sleigh ride is rather gruesome. And this one is a bit of a comical depiction here that we see. What it is, Nantucket sleigh ride is once the harpoon is struck into the whale and it is tied off onto the boat, then you are taken on that ride. And here they have a depiction of one of the whalers actually on the tails, the flukes of the whale, holding up that blood that's spurting up, folks. This is what you would refer to as a blood red rose. Now, it was in this month here, folks, in San Simeon in 1880 that a right whale was spotted off the coast. Joseph Clark, he said it was about 5 to 6 miles away. They sent out 2 boats after this whale. He'd only seen 9 of these right whales in the 17 years at that point that he had been whale fishing off of San Simeon. Again, as I mentioned, 2 boats were sent out. Now, this was always done for safety reasons. Now, they got up to this whale fairly quickly, got out there, had a brief encounter, used those greener guns to shoot the harpoons into it. Both of the whale boats did that. Between them, they launched 25 bomb lances into this whale, and during just that brief encounter. And something that could be an act worthy of Herman Melville, this whale was not to be brought down, was going to use the last of its strength to show them what for. It raised its flukes, and it stove in one of the whale boats amidship, right in the middle, sent 7 whalers, right up into the water and down into the drink now. Luckily, for these whalers at least, they were good swimmers, and they were able to get on over to the next whaleboat, and that one immediately cut the lines into the pursuit and then limped their way back to shore, overloaded with 14 men in this boat. They never were able to recover the whale. Don't know what happened to it. Likely did die due to its wounds. I like to imagine it getting away, but I'm just a bit of a hopeless romantic myself there. 1865, though, folks, that is the year that Joseph Clark and his whalers captured the largest amount. They got 25 whales with a profit of about $16,000. The estimated value of that today is going to be about $304,000. The lowest amount they caught was in 1878. They were able to capture 3 whales, actually suffered a loss of about $1,300, around $39,000 for us today. Again, folks, here we have kind of San Simeon, another view of the old piling there, the wave crashing down, the turning of the tide. Captain Joseph Clark, his health had truly began to decline by about 1888. That is when he was really going forward and began making out a will, trying to figure out what he's going to be doing with himself, this legacy. By October of 1891, his health was really going down, and he went up to San Francisco to see if there could be anything done for his illness, something that's still unknown exactly what he had. Unfortunately, nothing could be done, and he passed away on November 11th that year, and he's 56 years old. He was remembered to have been well liked by everyone who knew him. Mr. Steiner, a local man out here in San Simeon, remembered him as a stocky man, sort of a short man, round face, clean shaven compared to all the whalers, of which nearly all of them wore beards, just a tussle of gray hair around. He left everything to his cousin, Hippolyte Marshall, Hippolito Machado, inherited the whaling station, but Marshall didn't really have an interest so much into the whaling that he was living out in Adelaide. He began talking to Phoebe Apperson Hearst, though, the mother of William Randolph Hearst. She was interested in it. Her husband, George Hearst, had passed away that same year, just earlier on. Their transaction of about 500 acres around Bay and on the Point, this was concluded by 1894. Phoebe Apperson Hearst, it was really, what I've read, it was, she did not like the smell and the mess that came about from whaling. This is a very messy business, and the smell from the boiling vats there was known to be rather villainous. And so that's why she put an end to the whaling essentially in that year. Now, the old station was still used by fishermen, probably to this day. David Bertau, who wrote the Portuguese Shore Whalers of California, 1854 to 1904, I believe he said that about 1908, there was still one track trying to make it out there at San Simeon, though I haven't really found too much more other than his works myself on this. In fact, folks, there was still whaling, though, in California, Richmond, the Bay Area, until about 1974, 1975. Taking whales offshore and rendering a ride in there. And if you can believe it, they're actually using a lot of that for cattle feed and dog feed. Folks, this does, though, now bring us to the end of the presentation. I'd like to show you one last chart here. This is San Simeon from 1919. This is the year that Phoebe Apperson Hearst passed away. William Randolph Hearst inherits his land and eventually starts building up there at San Simeon. I'd like to give special thank yous to the Historical Guide Association, to the Portuguese Historical Museum, to the Mystic Seaport Museum, Cambria Historical Society, and the Morro Bay Maritime Museum. If there's anybody I've missed in crediting anything, I do apologize, but I'd like to thank you all very much again for joining me. I hope I've been able to cover enough of this to give you at least some conversations going home with and something to talk about your friends. Now, I'm very thankful that we don't have whaling anymore. I like to be able to see them. I was lucky enough to experience the baby gray whale that was in Morro Bay, swam underneath my boat one night. It was a magical experience, and I could never imagine picking up a harpoon or any sort of instrument going after them. But again, folks, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Gregory. We're going to have questions. I think great presentation. I'm sure we have questions about this. And then we have our plant sale going on. But yeah, take it away, Gregory. Thank you.
Yes, Andrew.
On one of the slides, it mentioned the lighthouse. Could you go into the greater detail when they first built the lighthouse?
Oh, now that one, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't tell you. I believe it's about 1872, 1873. Melody, would you happen to know that one?
What year they built it, actually?
I've been looking into that. I can actually probably look that up. Give me a moment here, and I'll look into Portuguese. But it's got to be around the early 1870s, I believe, is when they first built it.
Was that after the steamer?
Yes, it was. The lighthouse was really created after those two wrecks because it was really known that they needed to have some sort of warning for the rocks that are along that coast. And that's what really came about because the wreck of the steamer, the Sierra Nevada, as well as the iron bark, the Harlech Castle. Which the Harlech Castle, real quick, folks, is still resting off the coast there. It's upside down. My friend, I believe it's Kevin Williams. He operates the whale watching business out of Morro Bay. He's dove on that and told me that it's upside down there. And I did read, and I haven't been able to confirm it myself, that some of the objects from the Sierra Nevada were kept at the Piedras Blancas light station kind of afterwards. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, I'm curious, when Clark came with the whalers and started in 1852, what was the population like here? Were there a lot of people living, or was it very sparse, you know?
That is a good question. I don't know the actual population size, but I do believe that it was fairly sparse, even up in Monterey at that time. They were getting a little bit larger. Actually, I think that during the Mexican period, Monterey may have been, at least served for a short time, the capital, or up here in Northern California there. Because I do know that Richard Henry Dana Jr. in his book 2 Years Before the Mast, he mentions that they were to make a call there at Monterey to get all their documents in order, but they had a permission, or they had orders from the company to put into Santa Barbara, and they would be met and have things taken care of there. So the actual population, I don't know, but still fairly small. Yes, there were people living there. And in fact, the home on that slide that I was talking about with the Monterey whaling station, that was one of the older homes there. At least it had been abandoned by a family that went up to San Francisco for the gold rush, and Davenport were kind of able to take over. So it may have been getting a little bit sparser then. I believe people may have been leaving up north just because of the gold. So I'll have to look into that one a little bit more. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
When they were whaling out there, there was about as many as 40 families were out in the point.
Oh, yes.
Out in the point.
Yes, and that's I know it.
Sebastian's store was out in the point and was dragged in by skids to the location where it is now.
Yes, and they blew that in. What was that around? It was 1878 that they pulled it out there.
1919.
Oh, 1990. Oh goodness, yes. And that was it. And
That's when Sebastian's took it over.
yes, and the Sebastians, they bought that from the Thorndikes, correct? I thought so. Yes, thank you. Oh, yes. Sir.
Yeah, just point out, anytime you guys go up to Davenport, along Highway 1, I did notice one time when I was exploring around up there, I noticed there's infrastructure, like old pilings and concrete. There used to be a long pier that goes out, and what looks like maybe a rail system that goes up the cliff, so maybe that was part of
yes,
the
you know,
railway
and a lot of times up and down the coast here, you have these dog hole ports. And that was really come about because of the lumber industry, the dog hole schooners. They call these dog hole ports because the sailors jokingly said that they were just big enough for a dog to barely have enough room to turn around. And since they couldn't actually have orbs, sometimes they would have these big cables and have chutes kind of going on down. And so it really depended on the area. So it could be something like that. It could be from the whaling.
Yeah, you're right, because there is a logging company right there too. So.
Oh yes, and that's another
And a
presentation.
rail line that's been there for a long time.
Yes, up and down. Yes.
I'm not sure if I understood correctly, if whaling ended when Clark died in 1891 or when Phoebe Hearst purchased the property in 1894?
To my understanding, it officially came to an end in 1894, but it really wasn't kept up too much after 1891. When Joseph Clark, when his health is really declining there, and he goes up to San Francisco, a man, I believe it was Pedro Gomez, I believe, of Monterey, to come down and took care of the whaling station for that. But it was pretty much around there. Yes.
Phoebe Hurst is the one who said, "No, we're done."
Yes.
I know that smell.
Yes, and that's what David Bertal said. There's one last one, but I kind of don't think that was, because I believe that once Phoebe Hurst said it's done, she wasn't going to allow it to start up again.
She bought the
But-
point.
Yes, yes. So I'd say again around 1891, but officially definitely no more by 1894, because that's when that transaction officially concluded. Yes.
Thank you for a wonderful lecture. I wondered how much did whale bones matter for commercial corset industry?
Oh, yes, actually, yes, they would use those, but honestly, for our shore whalers at San Simeon, I'm not so certain how much they were shipping those up. I personally haven't come across a whole lot on that, but that is something that I'll have to deep delve into more. I've been told by several locals in the area that after some big storms, the whale bones of San Simeon will kind of get exposed. They would use them a lot, though, you know, as you mentioned, for the corsets. And of course, whale oil is being used for lubricants, for burning the lamps, for making perfumes, the ambergris going around. But you know, again, something else. Thanks for the question. That is something I'll have to rabbit hole down a little bit more. Yes.
Greg, again, yeah, thank you for a great presentation. The captain, I'm just curious, did he have a monopoly? Was he the only guy that could operate off that point? You said he owned the land and then Phoebe bought it. So did he have a good thing, or was it?
I believe he had a good thing. I don't think that he was necessarily stopping other people from going around, but it's kind of small, smaller area, so it's a little bit territorial now. The closest other whale stations that I know of, at least in our county, it's going to be down in off of San Luis Obispo there, off the point. I haven't read anything about him stopping other whalers. The thing is, for him, whaling, it's kind of a seasonal operation. So a lot of these fellas, they would be working from October to April. This is the end of the up season, and whales start going down to go after them again. But a lot of the locals are working kind of farming around, so it may not have been the most enticing position. Wow. I see another question. Oh, yes, sir.
What was going on with the general whaling boats at that time?
Are we talking
Were they coming into San Simeon to have their blubber boiled too, or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't read about any whale ships actually coming in to have the try works done there. I imagine it was sort of a small enough operation that they were only handling what they took in. They did have, like I said, those try works kind of set up around Monterey and some of the other areas, and I believe they would probably go to a larger port of call, because we are kind of still in small towns along the coast here.
Good, Gregory, at that time, it was already kind of considered like a dead profession or a passing profession, because
yes, we are getting into a little bit more like a kerosene, petroleum oils. It's starting to be a little bit easier or less dangerous to mine that rather than going into whales.
Did Clark, having come from the Azores, did he have experience whaling in New Bedford, Nantucket?
Now that I'm not too certain of, and he is one that I would like to do a deep delve. I'd like to use him as a thesis for a master's program. But I just know that he was involved in a little bit of whaling around. Again, it's just a fascinating rabbit hole that I kept tripping down, and I was fearful that if I let myself get more and more that I'd end up expecting you folks here every other night, again, like it'd be a college going forward. As much as I'd like to do that, I want to keep everyone on there. Yes, ma'am.
Something I just wanted to share, because I do an historical marine biology for Leffingwell High School. One of the most interesting parts of that they gathered from the whale is milk. They literally would get 500 to 800 gallons out of a female, and that milk was sold.
Wow,
On the
I
food
did not
industry.
know.
I'll supply you with all those documents.
Thank you
because
so much
I want
for
you to know
sharing
that
that.
it exists.
Yes.
But the kids always go, "Bleh, what do we?"
Whale milk.
But it does give on the out of San Simeon, our port, they would ship the whale bone it was 300 or 400 pounds of bone at a time.
Oh, so they would ship them out of there?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, they harvested all of it. I mean, they really
What would they use
used
the bone for?
it. Excuse me?
Was it for corsets?
Yes, a lot of it was for corsets.
Homes, yeah.
Do they make fertilizer out of it?
I don't know. You know, that we all have those questions because it was shocking enough to find out they were shipping 100 terrapins at a time with whalebone from San Simeon. Now, you guys know a terrapin is a freshwater turtle.
Oh, yes, yes.
Right? So where do we have turtles big enough that you could make food from on it right here? I don't know.
Well,
Maybe at San Simeon Creek.
I
And
do
also
know
at
that Tulare
Pico
Lake,
Creek, I
they
heard.
used to get a lot of terrapins out of Tulare Lake, just on the other side of the San Lucias. I know, granted, that is a bit of a trek to be hauling them
Right.
out there.
But anyway, lots of interesting questions.
Yes, and the whale oil too, folks. Generally, a gray whale about 42, 45 feet long, usually around 90,000 pounds. Joseph Clark said he'd get about 35 barrels of oil out of one gray whale, which is about 1,000 to 1,500 gallons of oil. Yes.
It's my understanding that as electricity was becoming more and more normal, that the market for the lamp oil was literally drying up.
Yes.
Was the senator's house electrified, or was that still using lamps, or was that attached to the hydroelectric plant, or did that come after the castle was done?
That would have likely come after the castle, because I believe Julia Morgan built that hydroelectric power plant about 1920 using two Pelton wheel generators. They did have a couple of gas powered generators earlier, so likely W.R. Hearst, I mean, I don't think it would be out of the realm to say that he would have had the lines run to the senator's house. But it could, originally been the oil, and that is an excellent thought that they may have been just the local lamps, just plowing more whale oil around. Though even as it did climb,
Use whale oil.
Oh, really? Oh, good to know. So was it just kerosene oil? Because there is a lot of mining around here, so it is just petroleum based.
Did not use whale oil. It all went someplace else.
Yes.
Do we know how Joseph Machado chose the last name Clark?
That I do not know, honestly.
Because there's a
Fun.
Clark down in Santa Maria that goes together with Old Maud, the oil that was discovered down in Orchid Hill. I'm wondering if there's a connection there, so maybe you and I could jump down that road.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, did that sound like an invitation?
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was gonna tell you, electricity came to Cambria in 1921. You can use that as a before and after.
Yes. Okay, I was thinking, thank you, yeah, I thought it was around 1923, or maybe that's because it was 1923 is when they started running it up to the hilltop.
Yeah,
Is it
around
odd
there.
that he and George died the same year? There were so many parallels
Yes.
between the years that you just showed us. I was like, whoa.
Well, a little bit of a difference in age, but yeah, still kind of going around there. And Clark did die just around the time span that was expected for a man born around the 1830s.
So he was born later.
Yes.
The coastal schooners.
Yes.
Used to run the coast. 1858. How
Well,
often
and the
did
other
they run?
person
Did they
chose
run on
Marshall.
schedule,
In his
or
presentation,
what was
there was
the
a
operation?
Marshall.
A lot of those coastal schooners, generally around here, they're using a lot of those dog hole schooners, so they're just making a lot of lumber calls. But down at San Simeon, they would make somewhat regular calls, at least as of the early 1900s. Generally, though, some of the other vessels there just kind of stop occasionally. The Sarah Sands, a steamer, she put in there, I believe she was leaking, ran out of coal, and so it had an anchor there in the bay, and there really was nothing around. This would have been about 1852, I believe, or so. And so they tried. I had a couple of the rancheros from around there that brought them a whole bunch of firewood, burned about 3/4 of it before it couldn't even get around the point. And so then the vaqueros came down and sold horses to a lot of the passengers who made their way up to San Francisco, sent an agent up there as well.
And when they were under sail, would they run like once a week or once a month, or do you have any idea?
Now, that one off the top of my head, I really can't tell you, because a lot of it is really hard to go. I would say likely probably around once a month or so, but even as they had those steam engines going, it was really difficult, like in San Simeon, for them to make calls. Julia Morgan once wrote to Willie Randolph Hearst, the steamship company does not love us, as they were just really unable to put in. See, that we're here, we're facing the south, we're exposed to the south, and so anytime we have a winter storm, any swell wind comes in, this bay is absolutely not protected. And so it just kind of depends, and a lot of times those sailboats would have to just go on past and maybe go to try to get into about Port San Luis, something like that. I believe Morro Bay really wasn't used as a port of call until about 1872. And that was because of the schooner, the Alexina, with Captain Williams there, and Franklin Riley out of Morro Bay started a company built a wharf. Yes?
If, it sounds like the whaling kind of went out of fashion because they were finding other sources. Did it have anything to do with it being harder to find whales to kill?
Yes, whales that were spotted less and less frequently. They were overfishing. And again, that's also another reason that shore whaling actually started getting very big out here. The East Coast kind of overfished their whale populations around. And I believe at one point, I've read this, that they were actually sending barrels of whale oil around the Horn over to the East Coast. But yes, that is another reason they have more of the petroleum oils being used. The whales are in decline. They're starting to get losses on the whaling there. So as Clark passes away, it's kind of like the end of the era kind of going with him. Yes, sir.
What's the story on your harpoon?
Oh, yes. This, folks here, Anthony, would you grab that board for me? Thank you, sir. This is on loan from my friends at the Morro Bay Maritime Museum. I believe this is going to be a reproduction. So these harpoons that actually have a toggle in the head. There would be a pin set up in there, because the idea was once you threw it into the whale, you'd want that pin to break loose, so then that bar would come. And again, so this is really just to adhere it to the whale, and afterwards the mate or the striker comes up with the lance and then pierces the whale through the heart to kill him. And I did bring up, I brought over my jackknife here, folks, a sailor's knife. Thank you, Chuck. Just kind of a typical tool you'd have, just a nice flat-blade knife. And you got your marlin spike for splicing your lines, ropes, any little things like that. Just kind of common tools of the trade, anything boat-wise.
Gregory?
Yes.
These guys were big, they're rowing. What would these have been made out of? The wood portion? Is this redwood, or what are they,
Honestly, I'd imagine they're using coastal live oaks.
Okay.
Live oaks or redwood. This was the beginning of the redwood forest up here. So using anything that's really just likely close available. Understanding you get a little bit more of kind of the oak trees kind of down below, but if they're willing to hike up into the hills to get up into the pine trees, or the redwoods as well there, then that's what we use. But just any hardwood, I suppose, or anything that's available. Yes?
Yes, a couple of things. One is that, yes, they were hunting the whales to extinction, which was when they started hunting elephant seals for their blubber, which they then hunted to almost to extinction. But they're also, if you've been up to Piedras Blancas Lighthouse, if you have not been up there, they do a wonderful tour, and they do have artifacts from these shipwrecks.
Excellent.
And they have displays in the fog signal building.
Excellent.
Certainly worth taking that tour.
No, hat one now. Yes.
You said one of those vats that they boil the blubber in is still kind of buried where the old pier
Yes,
was? Has
that's
anyone
what
looked
Jimmy.
for it?
I'm sorry?
Has anyone looked for it?
So I don't know. So that source, I read that in Geneva Hamilton's Where the Highway Ends. So this book right here. And I think this came out about 1974, 1975. She said it was down there. I don't know if anybody's looked at it. That's something I want to get into. I'm trying to get into maritime archaeology.
It was moved.
It was?
It is now at the Hearst Ranch at the, where they have events.
Oh, the dairy barn?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's out in the back porch
Okay.
area. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you were up for a summertime kayak.
Well, that's what I figured. I might still go out there with a metal detector or a magnet and see what pops up. There are some sea caves out there that I've been told are fun to explore. A friend of mine said he used to hide a bottle of tequila in there, and he would discover the cave with friends. There would just happen to be a flare in a bottle, and they'd have a drink and tell some tales.
Yeah, 3-seat kayak, we can load a cooler, stick it right in the
Oh, yeah. I'll sail up to San Simeon and just drop anchor in the cove. You can use me as a floating home port. Alrighty, folks. Looks like we are getting about to the end of our time. Quick questions?
Just one more quick question because of animal harvesting, et cetera, et cetera. I was just very curious as if you knew much about otter pelts and being turned into hats or any of that sort of thing. And how
I do know that by about 1890 in San Simeon, they had a moratorium on hunting otters because they had really been played out. The Delia bird, the Lelia bird, this was Captain William Shaler and supercargo Richard Cleveland's vessel. They were using her for the otter pelt trade from about 1803 to 1805, actually going up and down the coast of California here. They weren't actually killing the otters themselves. They're more so just dropping anchor, likely at a place like San Simeon or Morro Bay, which is actually called Bernard's Bay. And they would purchase the pelts, and then they would sail on over to China and sell them for quite a profit out there. So yeah, that was another big trade. And the Coastal Discovery Center at San Simeon there, they actually have an otter pelt that you can feel. It's very soft, kind of a little bit unnerving, kind of reminds me of feeling rabbit pelts when I was a kid.
Do we know when they're gonna open? Every time I go in there, they're closed. What's the deal with that Discovery Center?
That, I really don't know, because I'm always working past 5, and it's very rare. I've only got to go in there just one time. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a kind of a ballpark figure for the extent of the industry, like 40 years or 50 years?
Oh, for shore whaling?
Yeah.
It was about 50 years for the shore whaling. 1854 to 1904 is generally the time stamp they use for that. And an excellent book on that really is this one right here, The Portuguese Shore Whalers of San Simeon by David Bertau. He actually has an entire chapter dedicated to San Luis Obispo County. We are generally skipped over when it comes to maritime history, which is quite a shame for larger folks.
Where was our market? Where did they send us to?
On the whale oil, I believe a lot of it was generally shipped up, I believe, to San Francisco, then maybe kind of down, and like I said, at one point started shipping it around the Horn, but I believe a lot of the major ports are calling on it, they're getting it up to San Francisco, and then it gets shipped out from over there. Yes?
I couldn't help it, but the rail line that went into the docks down there at the Cove, how long was it? How far did it either go up to Hearst or out to San Luis?
Oh, the rail that they had up here was actually just on the dock. George Hearst bought the land, though, thinking that the railway was actually coming up through here. It never did, though. About 1878, after he builds the Hearst Wharf out there, really kind of stops doing a lot of buildings. He wants to save the land for the boy. And so it makes me kind of wonder now just what Joseph Clark and W.R. Hearst, they would have thought, what they would have said if they would have had similar appreciations or not, or maybe his mother would have told him not to talk to that man with a smelly whalefish. Alrighty, folks. Again, I'd like to thank you all so much. Oh, one last question, yes.
The whales actually went out in the pier, but they also went up almost to the Highway 1.
Oh, really?
Because people would come in when they were doing fish, or they would come in and the trucks would come there from Monterey to pick up the fish and head up and mark cars.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. Very cool.
Marge lived in San Simeon.
Oh, yes. I got to meet her last February, and I'd still talk about you on my tours. Oh, last one then.
One more quick comment. This Sunday at the Green Space Creekside Reserve, they'll have an Earth Day celebration. All these organizations, the Coastal Discovery Center, Marine Mammal Center, will have booths there. So, show up there. It's 11 to 3 on Sunday.
Green space.
All right.
Let's give Greg another big hand. Thank you very much.
Folks, thank you again so much, and I do really appreciate all those questions and all those comments. You folks have taught me so much as well. I'm very happy that we could all have this shared edifying experience. Again, thank you, folks. And remember, you don't hear the songs anymore, but down at the Cove you might hear Boats and blows are rolling on. Go down, you blood red roses, go down. For it's flaming drafty around Cape Horn. Go down, you blood red roses, go down. Oh, you pinks and posies, go down, you blood red roses, go down. Thank you again, folks. I really appreciate you all coming out here today.